As one looks at the mass luminous coals of a furnace fire, the fire's luminous area, with the exception of the center, may under intent observation be broken up into viewable formations. The center, in holding the concentrative force of the fire and emitting the greatest light, must defeat any effort to see it as other than a vast concentration of impenetrable light and heat. Nor can its light be dissipated. If the observer of such a furnace fire were at sufficient distance, and if he had not had direct experience with such accumulation of heat and light, he would be compelled to conclude that the border areas of the fire concentration were different in substance and detached from the central area. Yet composition of the central area would be no different than the fiery matter viewable at the extremities of such an intense, luminous center. Every area would be continuous with a center. Nevertheless, astro-mathematical calculations develop the fallacy that the central luminosity, not unable to lens dissipation, is of a different model and is isolated from the extremities of that same center. Actually, the central concentration of a luminous sky gas area bears the same relation to the remainder of the detected sky luminosity as the furnace fire center is related to the extremities of the fire accumulation. The problem is resolved as follows. The gas mass of average skylight is readily lens detected in star proportion, whereas extraordinary gas mass content prohibits lens dissipation of the skylight. Accordingly, there can be lens detection and star formation only if those parts of the luminous area having less concentration than the central area. Hence, the center invites the conclusion that it is a remote body. The furnace fire center invited the same conclusion. Hence, the entire area is a nebula, and in a universe of reality, any nebula is but an aspect of luminous sky gas and light manifested throughout the entire universe. The fascinating feature of skylight formations from sky gas motion becomes a double feature as we review the 1946 rocket camera's accomplishments. On that occasion, a corresponding cloud formation was photographed within the luminous sky area over White Sands, New Mexico. It was also erroneously claimed to be a formation in the stratosphere. Hence, if it were of stratosphere formation, the astronomer would have to consider it a nebula. Now it may be seen that something is about to happen to the mathematical astronomers' abstract figures and symbols of distance. It is to be recalled that such a white cloud-like formation was developed at the feeble distance of 90 miles from the stratosphere photographing point. It should also be recalled that a nebula is the assumed mathematico-astronomical substance supposed to be observed only at vast distances, and because of distance, it is supposed to be the stuff of which stars are made. Hence, stars are being made in our own backyard. Marvelous creation. Observe again how dangerously close astronomers come to the answer contained in lights of telescopic detection, yet they will not see that the so-called nebula is part of celestial and terrestrial skylight, and that its detection anywhere is an expression of sky gas function. It matters little if the original claim concerning the stratosphere photograph is retracted. It holds that a white area of the photograph is a nebula in the stratosphere, and that the white patch was detached from the remainder of the photograph of terrestrial sky. The self-evident fact is that such a formation cannot possibly be considered remote from the remainder of a sky area photographed at a distance of only 90 miles. If it were remote, it would not have appeared as part of the photograph as it did. Whatever determination is made of that white patch in the luminous sky area over White Sands, it demands the discard of at least 50% of astro-mathematical deductions concerning the structure of the universe and what is taking place throughout the universe. What the U.S. Naval Research Bureau rocket camera developed cannot simultaneously be considered nebula and not nebula. It cannot represent something possible only at unfathomable distance and at the same time be proved to exist in terrestrial skylight less than 100 miles away from the photographing point. While such sky gas formations were concluded to exist only at assumed distance, the mind cannot grasp, and while they were assumed to be celestial entities unrelated to terrestrial sky gas development, the astronomical conclusion that they were detached from luminous celestial areas had to be accepted. Hence, they were undisputedly established as elements of the astronomer's so-called interstellar space, and with the assumption that they were contained in that space rather than in the detected celestial light, they were assumed to be building material for so-called stars. The singular feature of this immediate exposition is that the astronomer, by concluding that his so-called nebula is building material for stars, moves in a centuries-long course toward admission that physical continuity is a reality. But the astronomer does not know he has admitted it. If the astronomer's nebula builds stars, it is gas accumulation, and physical continuity shows how terrestrial and celestial sky gas accumulation must ever be considered stars and planets. However, the meeting of theory's abstract course with the course of reality he had described would prove to be too simple for complicated astronomy. It should here be related that when the early universe interpreters prepared the foundation for the elaborate astronomical framework, they could in no way anticipated the rocket's development and its sensational performance. Its camera's stratosphere photographs have shattered considerable of the suppositive astronomical fabric. And as rocket camera photographs have been responded to, there is a possibility that the universe's star system will be able to build a new star system, and that the star system will be able to build a new star system. This is a possibility that has been considered in the past. But what about the future? What is the future of the universe? And as rocket camera photographs have been responsible for such magnificent accomplishment, they have brought the realistic celestial structure much closer to the terrestrial. They have also accentuated the pace of modern man's conquest of the universe about us. In the foregoing reference to lens penetration and dissipation of celestial skylight concentration, the word penetration implies only lens' ability to grasp such luminous area for the purpose of recording it. It is a case of penetrating into the luminous surface, but not through the light accumulation of any skylight area, celestial or terrestrial. No lens can be expected to penetrate through skylight of the abstruse distances conjured by astromathematics. Particularly, does such apply when it has been conclusively proved by the stratosphere ascensions of 1931 and 1935, and by rocket camera photographs since 1946, that skylight cannot be penetrated through at a distance of less than 1 mile in the first case, and at 90 to 190 miles in the latter case. Hence the necessarily oft-repeated description that lens function must hold. No telescopic lens can penetrate through celestial or terrestrial skylight and detect the underlying land. If lenses could so perform, and if their findings could thereafter penetrate certain interpreting substance, all the celestial problems would have been resolved when the first telescope was fashioned. This account of lens failure to penetrate through light presupposes an absence of a light-penetrating emulsion applicable to photography. If there is a medium applicable to telescopy, it represents a very recent development and is unknown to this writer. However, even with application of such a light-penetrating medium to the camera lens, the area photographed through light must be distorted, and use of the medium will be readily detected by evident distortion of and foliage on the Earth's surface. The greatest boon to mankind, other than the secret of overcoming death, would be the invention which might permit telescopic observation of that which is under every light detected in the universe about us. Then this volume might not be necessary. In what might be considered a capitulation to reason, there is observed the measure of penetrating into, but not through, the celestial skylight surface, astronomically designated Nebula M31 in Andromeda. That celestial skylight has already received some attention here. Though the land exists under such a skylight area, there can be no land consideration by astronomy, which deals only with the outer surface skylight. A much different story would be unfolded by astronomy if telescopic lenses could penetrate celestial skylight, particularly at the distances supposed to be involved. At the aforementioned celestial skylight point, the mathematical astronomers estimate a nebula accumulation weighing 3,500 million times the Sun's mathematized weight. If one dotes on figures, such figures should be impressive even if no light or sun existed for the figures of comparison. As such colossal figures are presented, it is asserted that the nebula mass can be dissipated under lens magnification. However, in this instance, the manner of dissipation merits qualification. No area of sky gas is dispersed by a lens, but the fact of seeming dissipation is sufficient to establish that the telescopic lens detects nothing but luminous sky gas. This dissipation in no way implies penetration. It is but a superficial dissipation, likened to the dissipation of an impenetrable fog bank experienced on the Earth's surface. Though the fog bank is not to be penetrated by the optic lens, its outer areas may in various manner be dissipated. If the fog bank could be dissipated at our will, it would not be impenetrable. If it could be dissipated in the true sense of the word, we could see beyond it. Therefore, we could not say the fog had been penetrated. The telescopic lens cannot and does not dissipate sky gas to permit penetration. Were such possible, the land underlying the sky gas would be detected. But since astronomical conclusions do not seem to approximate such reasoning, we will pursue astronomical deduction as the astronomer would have it. This assumed nebula mass, which is really sky gas cloud over a celestial land area, is mathematized as being 3,500 million times the unknown sun's mass and weight, assumed to be known through the same abstract mathematical procedure. And the light of such a nebula mass can be dissipated, but not penetrated, over cosmic distance, assumed to be only a feeble 900,000 light-years. This impressive astronomical light-year is the distance a ray of light is assumed to travel during the course of our known year of 365 days, while moving at the speed of 186,000 miles every second of that year. That yearly distance is a trivial 6 trillion miles. Now that single light-year distance need only be multiplied by 900,000. Though one cannot possibly conceive a fraction of such distance, one may now easily realize precisely how a telescope lens can detect and dissipate light existent at such distance. One may also have full realization why the lens cannot penetrate celestial skylight. Caution seems to dictate that one not attempts to visualize such distance or the manner whereby a telescope lens might detect and dissipate light over such an inconceivable distance, yet lack the power to penetrate it. Though there could be double, triple, or a trillion times such inconceivable distance to infinity, there's no lens created, and none that could be created to detect light over a distance mathematized as a small fraction of 1 light-year, to say nothing of 900,000 light-years. Such distances do not exist for realistic entities in a world of reality. They exist only in and for the abstract universe of the abstract mathematician. A ray of light is most factual. A telescope lens is a realistic entity in spite of its inherent error, and the established function of light ray and telescope lens prohibits the fantastic performance as mathematically prescribed. The prohibition is proved by the fact that a lens is compelled by its function to create curves in its detection of light, and rays of light are compelled by their function to wave and bend as the curve-producing lens seeks to detect them. The lens does not penetrate through 6 trillion miles of space before developing the curve, and a ray of light does not travel such distance without bending. The lone factor of lens curvature prohibits such telescope accomplishment, and the abstract determinations have been dictated through the control of abstract mathematics. They are sole arbiter of the situation, qualitative and quantitative. Were one competent to imagine a telescope lens of such construction as to eliminate lens curvature, and thereby to permit lens penetration of boundless, inconceivable infinity? By what reasoning could it be known that inconceivable infinity had been penetrated to its limitless extent? Were we to grant conceptual ability to retain, other than by mathematical symbol, a time-space end to infinity, what would we name that which would extend beyond the finite bounds of infinity? What would we name that which would extend beyond the finite bounds of infinity? Regardless of designation, would it not constitute a continuance of infinity? The human mind, in wayward fashion, seeks to establish the end, though it must ever be denied knowledge of the beginning. The empty procedure is likened to a furloughing attempt to determine the Creator's creator. Therein it would be found that, when mind established a power behind and preceding the Creator, the mental process to establish first cause to supersede the mind's designation of Creator's creator would develop into an endless and futile procedure, and mind in its quest would become lost. The ultimate of abstract astro-mathematical endeavor defeats the purpose of all educational advancement and modern scientific research. The endeavor reflects the immature wisdom of the child in Sunday school class, who, being told that God created the world, was impelled to ask, "Who made God?" Astro-mathematics rush headlong toward the elusive end of the universe mathematically ordered. In so doing, they deny the universe of reality at hand, and as in that denial they demand that modern men relinquish his divine right to conquer and to inhabit the resplendent universe about us. Like the child who should first seek to know God and his abundant manifestations close at hand, the astro-mathematician should first seek to know the meaning of cosmic manifestations before attempting to find the end of the universe. Somehow, there seems to be more glamour attaching to the second course, and, like most glamour, it is shallow and unproductive. No portion of the astronomical portrait dealing with the so-called nebula M31 in Andromeda has application to a universe of reality. As the astronomer presents it, the portrait is one which applies in its entirety to the unreal universe of abstract mathematics. The lack of realism in astro-mathematical conclusions may be understood from the following. If from the nearest celestial point from San Francisco, London, Rome, or any other terrestrial point there, was erected an astronomical observatory equipped with the identical mechanical equipment and astronomer deductions, now applying to observations of the celestial, the conclusions to be reached in observations of the terrestrial would compare with present conclusions concerning the celestial. The distances estimated from that celestial observatory to luminous terrestrial areas would have to allow for the space assumed to exist between apparently isolated areas of the terrestrial. The fictional space pattern, now applicable to and influencing distance estimates for celestial areas, would have identical application to the assumed interstellar space between apparently isolated terrestrial bodies. Never could the Earth territory of the universe be seen as a single unit in space, but only as popular misconception has held. Lens curvature prohibits any such distant observation, and lens curvature demands that the Earth be seen as the multiple globular and isolated bodies deceptively arranged for the celestial. The absurdity of the astronomical estimate of the sky gas mass in that area the astronomer knows as nebula M31 in Andromeda would be established by corresponding appearances in areas of the terrestrial sky. The apparent gas mass of at least one area of the Earth's entire luminous outer sky surface would be found to present the same appearance as the area known as nebula M31 in Andromeda, and if its assumptive weight were to be compared with the Sun's assumed mass, the figures applied to the Andromeda condition would hold equivalent application in the world of figures. Moreover, the inconceivable distances involved in the detection of the Andromeda skylight could be made to apply to known areas of the terrestrial sky only a few thousand miles away from the observation point. The factors heretofore described, particularly the assumptive space factor, would permit the most abstruse mathematics in description of distance. Were we to establish at a 10,000-mile stratosphere altitude an imaginary terrestrial skyline as the measuring base through our terrestrial skylight areas, it would be considered to represent the terrestrial star area, conforming to Herschel's base formula for celestial skylight areas. There would thereby be formed a terrestrial galactic system agreeing with the present celestial galactic system of astronomical order. It would embrace terrestrial skylight areas to a mathematically designated extent in all directions away from the terrestrial galactic plane. Now, it must be understood that the distances presently recorded from the celestial galactic plane to the greatest extent of celestial skylight detection are purely attributes of mathematical formula. They are most unreal. Then, in applying the customary astronomical yardstick, the presently known and real distances from the terrestrial galactic plane to the most remote terrestrial skylight points would demand the identical abstruse distance consideration applicable to celestial skylight points detected beyond a given distance from the celestial galactic plane or line.